Hello there, this is Rom Wills coming back at you with yet another podcast. Why Rom doesn't go in on street dudes. Yeah, you know what? I had somebody hit me up privately, right? Because, we got this constant Pooky and Ray Ray argument, and people, and I know this, even this one's going to spark some more, but, somebody hit me up and they were very respectful. They were very respectful, but they wanted to know how come I don't seem like I ever go in on the Pooky and Ray Ray thing. Even though, even in the past, I've been, more supportive of the educated classic man type of dude. But at the same time, I've never said, yeah, they're just evil. Only thing I've said about, actually all I've ever said about the whole street dudes, Pooky and Ray Ray, is that it's overblown as far as them getting women. In fact, my argument has generally been the whole thing is over women, right? But to explain in a word, or in a phrase rather, why I don't really go in on them, that's because they're complicated. Look, I'm going to tell you what. If we say on one side, we got the Pooky and Ray Rays, right? On the other side, the educated lames or so-called, or, more bookish types, intellectual types. It's not a black and white thing. It's complicated. People, human beings are complex. Nobody is totally good. Nobody's totally bad. In fact, and this could be something for my Deep Thought channel. Good and evil and bad, whatever, positive, negative, whatever, those are relative, right? If a fox is in the hen house, that's a good thing for the fox and bad for the hen, right? And from the hen's point of view, that fox being in there is bad, And, from the fox's point of view, if he can't get in the hen house, that's a real bad thing for him. So it's relative. Now, with the street dudes, yeah, I see stuff that they're doing. But I've seen everything I've seen done by educated dudes. I've seen some of these guys, you got some street dudes, they just doing some foul stuff and whatever to women. So are some educated dudes. I've known some cops who've dealt with domestic violence a lot. And, I knew one, he was going to like a affluent area. Most of his calls were in an affluent area. Most of his calls, they weren't in the hood or anything. So, it's like it goes back and forth. But then there's one reason, though. Because if we talk about other stuff, we get beyond the woman thing, relationship thing, even the intellect thing. Right? And that's actually a big reason why I wouldn't go in on street dudes, because it's complicated even there. Let me give you something that really illustrated that and really made me think about that, right? Because even though, I grew up in the hood, spent some time there, but I moved away from it, right? But there was, my peer group from that time was mostly educated type of cats, people with degrees, professional degrees, stuff like that, right? So, so I wasn't really encountering the street dude as much. But there was something that struck me. And this is a phenomenon I've seen over the years. And to give you some background on it, right? People who know me well know I'll spend a lot of time in a bookstore. Now, when I was living in the D.C. area, and some people might remember the bookstore chain, Caribou Bookstores, right? And I would always spend some time in there. And also, I was friends with probably most of the black bookstore owners in the D.C. area. And this helped me get into publishing, right? But I remember I was in one particular Caribou bookstore, and there was a fine young lady in there. Me and her still Facebook friends. I haven't seen her in a while, but real cool, real good peoples and whatnot, right? Very intelligent sister, Muslim. She was a Muslim sister, right? And I remember I'm sitting in there chilling, and she pointed over to all the hardcore books. Like the Black history type of books, Pan-African type of books, metaphysical type of books. You talking about the stuff, Dr. Ben's stuff, John Henry Clark stuff, whole bunch of scholarly type of stuff, deep information. I remember she pointed over there one day and she was like, "Hey, Rom, you see that section over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "The type of guys who will come in and buy that will surprise you. It'll be guys that everybody else would call thugs, but then those same dudes that, look like thugs, they come in there and they'll put money down and get that stuff, right?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, I ain't doubt or anything, but up to that point, they hadn't had evidence." So since I hung out there enough to probably get a job, I'm in there another time, and sure enough, as if to illustrate the point, as if the Great Pumpkin wanted to illustrate the point, I had a couple street dude types came in, and they went right over to that section. And I remember how they were talking. They were like, and they picked up a deep book. It was like it was something deep. I think if I remember correctly, it might have been a type of book that was analyzing the Bible or something. Right. And they were talking about it and they were like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, we got to get this and, get a study group going and everything." Right. And that struck me. And then after that, when I started talking to other black bookstore owners, all of them repeated it. All of them, every single one repeated the same thing. They say, "Yeah, they'll come and buy. You'd be surprised who buys what." And then finally, I say in the early 2000s, I had a book stand. Now, I divided my book stand between like the fiction books, like the Zanes and everything, and then the hardcore deep thinking stuff, right? The hardcore stuff. And sure enough, it was the same dynamic. Like I used to have a lot of street cats stop by. Like I had one cat, he's still my favorite. He's still my favorite because this was a notorious stick-up kid. If I call his name, anybody who lived in the probably Maryland, around the Camp Springs area, probably know his name if I called his name. All right. That dude came up and gave me a reading list and prepaid for stuff. And I'm like counting the money. I'm like, "Hey, I was like, hey, dude, how'd you get this money?" And dude just looked at me. He's like, "Ron, you really don't want to know, do you?" I was like, "Nah, I really don't do it." Right, but I was looking at the books he had me get. I was like, "Damn, dude, you reading this?" Right, and you get a lot of cats. You get a lot of cats on that. Now, it's not to condone what he did for a living or what some street cats, notice I said some street cats can get into, because a lot of them just trying to survive like everybody else. But it's a complexity there. It's a complexity, and that complexity is all over. Like I said, I've seen dudes who look like upstanding, church-going citizens, educated. They go to somebody's church, and they into some rotten stuff. They into some corrupt stuff. In fact, I might have known a politician or two that's been indicted on something, but they were respectable or doing something, cooking some books or something like that, right? All of it's relative. It's like, I'll put it like this. A lot of so-called educated dudes got some Pooky in them and some Ray Ray in them. And then a lot of Pooky and Ray Rays, they got some educated dude in them. They got some educated cat in them. They got something to learn. They just might go about it differently. Like with the bookstores and the books and stuff, they just went about it differently. They didn't really get anything out of the formal education system. But then I'm gonna tell you what, if there's any black bookstore owners that happen to listen to me, you can co-sign it. It's a constant thing. They're coming in and buy it. That's why you see a lot of those cats who like into some type of consciousness or something. You ask them what they used to do, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I was slanging those drugs." They were working the corners. In fact, one of the smartest dudes I ever met. Now this is a PhD. If you see him look totally clean cut, that dude did a bit in prison. And it was like at a conference or something, and he was with some, took a group of guys in a private session. He was telling them about some stuff that was happening behind the bars. So it's a complexity. But yet, if anybody saw him, he just looked like, honestly, he looked like a nerdy, educated type of dude if you saw him walking. He looked like he ain't never get in trouble in his life. But as I said, it's a complexity. So, to answer the original question, I don't go in because it's complex. Unless you know that person, we can't paint a picture of like one side being like totally good and the other side being totally bad. Because it's relative. It's relative, it's complex, and people are complex. So, anyway, that's all I got for today. I'll get back with y'all later. Peace and blessings.